I do a lot of stuff in institutionalization of UX. How do you do UX at scale in organizations? This is kind of my life's work. And so while I've been in the field for, I don't know, 45 years, the last quarter century was about how we set up a practice. If any of these are missing, it's a big problem. I saw a sort of science fiction movie on Netflix. I recommend it. It was fun, called The Three Body Problem. And the three body problem is a problem in math, really, which says if you have two objects of about the same size and they're circling each other, that's a pretty stable thing. If you have three of about the same size and they're circling each other, it starts to become chaotic. You don't know where they're going to go easily. There's special math required. It becomes a very, very complicated problem. And so I saw this and I started thinking about the smaller side of UX teams. And what happens when you have, say, a startup and you need to do UX for that? And usually there's one person or two people. So you don't have that three body problem so much. It's two people. Maybe they're working together. But how do you make that really effective? The left side, which is part of a staircase, that it says that there are levels of UX work. And it's very difficult to find somebody who can do all of that. And so what most startups will do is they will get people that can do the structural design, detailed design, testing, but the strategy, innovation, even persuasion engineering work is done by executives who may not have UX skills. And the problem with it is that it's highly person dependent. If one of those folks leaves, you've really had it. It doesn't work. People in this kind of environment often say, oh, the UX isn't efficient. And they're right, because it's not being done with all the tools that we normally have. This can't handle any major pieces of work. So it is a stable configuration, but I'm not loving this. As you get a little bigger, if you had three people that were like all the same level, it would be catastrophic, but we don't usually see that. We usually see there's one person that's a lead and then a few people working under them. This is better in that now I can often handle more of the work. Maybe I can get somebody who does persuasion engineering, and I have the ability to have a bigger footprint. But you still kind of have those same problems. It's person dependent. It's such a small team. And I've seen these teams where literally half of them decide to quit all at once. And how do you manage that? How do you scale this up? This is not a mature practice. And let's dissect what I mean by that for a second. When we say we're going to have a mature practice, in our field, there are a set of roles that have to happen. Not really people. But I have a director role, and the director is the politician, the director is the communicator, the director is focused on building a practice. Now, that director has a technical design authority role that is really reporting to the director. And the design authority is the person with maximum gravitas who will deal with the hard questions. There are then people or roles that deal with infrastructure, knowledge management, standards, methods, all of that. You have another set of experts that deal with particular areas that your run-of-the-mill UX person doesn't know all that much about. Then you have to have recruiting and staffing and somebody who does the management of who's working on what. And then you have project leads and project staff. So how do we get those roles done? Well, there's a fairy tale that executives seem to believe that you can have one person who can be the director, which means they're a great leader, politically savvy, able to walk into the boardroom, get money, get funding, who is focused about how they build a sustainable practice. Magically, that same person is supposed to have the design authority role, which means they have gravitas in the UX field. They're sort of master designers. And then there's another role, the UX manager, that says they're going to figure out the chess game of who's working on what and who we're bringing in, who we're hiring. And then there's the project lead, who is supposed to be working on a given program, deep into the program, and making sure everything's happening. That's supposed to be one person. So if you could have somebody who will do all those things, you still have the question, who handles infrastructure and knowledge management? Who handles methods? Who, builds the operating model? Who is the specialist who will come in and do accessibility or AI or whatever it might be? And then who's going to do recruiting? If these things aren't done well, then we're really in trouble, right? This kind of gap, I believe, is what ends UX teams. Sure, you can get an organization that will build a small team and go, yeah, we're going to put this together. But as they experience that it's inefficient and not sustainable and person dependent and all this, it's the end of it. We need to have methods so that we're not reinventing every time we do a project. The UX field is a space where we have a set of different kinds of things we do, and it's well known, right? I am standing on the shoulders of a generation that's now gone, who helped build these methods, and we've refined them. We should be able to go in and say, this is a usability test. And these are the steps of a usability test. Every step defined, understood. And templates that I can pull up so I don't have to reinvent things each time. If I don't do this, I am not going to be efficient. There's a lot of stuff, objects really, that we deal with in the UX space. And we tend to just let them fall on the floor and reinvent them each time in many cases. This is an amazing example. It's a real case we ran across recently. So this is an organization that spends millions of dollars doing research on users. And so you're doing an app which is going to be used by families getting the first diagnosis of type 1 diabetes for their daughter. So I need to know about that ecosystem. What's it like for that type 1 diabetes patient? What do we know about that? What do we know about the family dynamics and what they have to do? And so you go into their repository of research, and this is what you see. What button do you click on? No idea. So you basically lose all that data. We have so many other specialties. There's a whole field of internationalization and localization, dealing with different cultures. This is a great example. I love this. This was in India, and this is an ATM used by illiterate users in many cases. And so they have these icons, and we tested it in India, and people looked at it and they went, there's a hand holding green paper. What What's that about? Why do I need green paper? Because in India, the money isn't green. So just being aware of that sort of thing is important. This is another case, a recent one from one of our clients. And they were like, yeah, we have accessibility under control, and we tested and they don't. So we need to have these specialties, subspecialties in our field covered. As we go to hire staff, I have a lot of trouble trying to get executives to understand that we are an engineering discipline and it's not people with empathy. This is an employment test that we developed, and these are some of the things that we just test for to see, can you do usability testing? Can you do user research, interface design? And that test was interesting because when we did that validation, we could see when we tested it, there's a random level, and an undergraduate student does basically almost random. UX worker, like a master's degree, 59%, and an expert 75%. So this is a concrete thing. There are things you need to know in the field. Many of you have, the CUA training and CXA, CUA, CXA certification. This is an environment we looked at. This is a list of all the people they had. 5 had masters, 3 had certifications. How do you expect to do good work with that? This is the HFI training and certification program. And this is an effective kind of baseline foundational resource. So consider that. So in order to solve this problem of how we deal with small teams, what we've done that I believe is successful, and I would hand it as a model to the industry, that we can deliver a UX practice in a box. An instant on level 5 or at least level 4 team, which will have everything it needs and be supported and be able to do the things that the organization needs. And so being able to do that at scale, I think, is much more practical. And so the discovery that I would share is that the ability to have an instant on team is now, I would say, a proven thing. Large organizations sometimes start with a seed team like that, but there you can have all those different roles covered. This is a long process. This is a 2-year plan for one organization, and it can be a struggle, but it does get done. Those organization structures look like this with 100 people, 120 people, and they end up being successful, and they're good in a lot of ways. So this is a large team environment, which is different. When we look at a large team or a small team, we have kind of a model in our head, you could do a screen grab, of how we think about whether that team is successful. This is a structure that we use often to report back on how that team is working. Do you have an org structure? Do you have staffing and training, methods, standards? Okay. How mature is your group? How much do you use advanced UX capabilities? So there's a set of things that we look for. And so this is a capabilities model. Beyond that, we've discovered that you need a little bit more. So a capabilities model says, I have the stuff it takes to do the UX work, but we also need to deal with the change management aspect. This is Kotter's change management model, but we can make it concrete. We have a set of things we can do. We need to get a sense of urgency. We need to get a guiding coalition. So there are real things we can do. I would say in getting started, if you have a UX practice and you're trying to get it moving, getting that sense of urgency is very important, and that won't happen by just sitting together and telling stories.